The thought that people can just disappear and never be seen again is a deeply troubling one. We can explore the skies above us and the seas below, but yet are unable to explain or find these missing people. What is even more unnerving is that this happens every day. Luckily, most of them are found, but there are still those that remain a mystery. In today's video, we will look at 4 disappearances that are truly strange in almost every way. From the disappearance of a whole colony without a trace, to the disappearance of 3 women on Lake Michigan one summer day. Roanoke. It was August of 1587, when roughly 115 English migrants landed on Roanoke Island, which was just off the coast of current-day North Carolina. Months later, John White, who was the governor of the colony, was set to sail back to England so that he could bring back supplies for the civilization. However, when he arrived back in England, a war broke out between England and Spain, and he was unable to go back to Roanoke until August 1590. But what he returned to remains one of America's oldest unexplained disappearances. When John White returned to Roanoke, there was no trace of the colony ever being there, or of the settlers, including his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first ever English child born in the Americas. The only thing left behind was a wooden post with the word Croatoan carved into it. Despite there being multiple investigations about Roanoke, nobody has been able to develop what truly occurred. A couple ideas are that they might have tried to sail back to England in need of supplies, but got lost at sea to perish, or had been killed by Spaniards from Florida. However, the word Croatoan was the name of the island south of Roanoke, as well as the Native Americans who inhabited the island. It is believed that they could have been killed or kidnapped by the Croatoans, leaving the colony to vanish and never be heard from again. Jessica Susanne Gutierrez. Jessica was in her bedroom sleeping with her 2 sisters in Lexington, South Carolina on June 5, 1986. An unknown intruder entered into the house by breaking in through the living room window and removing the curtain screen. They took Jessica as she was asleep and walked through the front door. Her mother discovered the mess and her disappearance the following morning, after her 6-year-old sister, Rebecca, told her mother that Jessica had been taken by the man with the magic hat and beard. Jessica was never heard or seen again. To this day, Rebecca remembers that night seeing a man come into the room and take Jessica, being too scared to do anything, until the following morning. A few days before the disappearance of Jessica, her mother, Deborah, had broken up with her boyfriend, which ended up with her kicking him out of the house for alcohol abuse. Deborah initially accused her boyfriend of kidnapping Jessica, but he claimed to not know her location. She then believed that a family friend might have kidnapped her child, as she found fibers in an abandoned car that were linked to Jessica. This car belonged to a 27-year-old friend of theirs who had served in North Carolina prison for rape. In 1987, this man had told his cellmate how he kidnapped a girl in Lexington County, then buried her body in a landfill in the area. He went into detail, saying how he wore a cowboy hat that night, but refused to confess to the authorities unless he received immunity for the crime, which he was denied. This man has not been publicly identified or charged with the disappearance of Jessica, despite his fingerprint being found on the window of Jessica's bedroom. To this day, Deborah believes her ex-boyfriend and the man committed the crime together, as she stated they had met at a gathering months prior to the disappearance. They deny knowing each other, but the whereabouts of Jessica and the true identity of the man with the magic hat are still unknown to this day. Brianna Maitland. Brianna, who was 17 years old at the time of her disappearance, was last seen on March 19, 2004, where she went missing while on her way home after her shift at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont. Prior to leaving, her coworkers had asked her to stay to have dinner with them, but she had said she was tired and needed to head home as she had to work in the morning in St. Albans, Vermont, for a second job as a waitress. She lived in Sheldon, Vermont, with Jillian Stout, a childhood friend of hers. It was Jillian who called Brianna's parents on March 23rd, as she hadn't seen her in a few days, and assumed that Brianna had gone back to her parents' house. It was at this moment they realized Brianna had gone missing. The day of her disappearance might hold the truth in what happened to her, as earlier that day she had taken the exam for her GED, after which her and her mother Kelly went to lunch to celebrate, where she was said to be joyful and happy. However, it was when they visited the store to do some errands that her behavior became strange. While they were waiting in the checkout line, Kelly noticed that her daughter was in a worried state, at which Brianna had said she was going to leave but would come back after. Kelly finished checking out and met her out in the parking lot, but Brianna was vastly different. She appeared scared and shaken by something that Kelly never got to find the answer about, because she didn't want to pry the answer out of her, and she could tell that Brianna was very worried. Brianna simply stated that she had to go back to her house for her shift at the Black Lantern Inn, but this would be the last time Mrs. Maitland would see her daughter. Now, even more bizarre is that the days after her disappearance, on March 20th, her green four-door 1985 Oldsmobile sedan was found parked partially inside of an abandoned barn called the Old Dutchburn House. The car was reversed into the building, which resulted in a hole in the wall. Now, investigators later believed that this could have been staged as some distraction to portray it was an accident. However, when the car was found, there were 2 paychecks of Brianna's that she had not cashed in yet. Her medicine, driver's license, makeup, contact lenses, and presumably her clothes, all found within the car. There were additional items found around the car, like a jacket, which did not belong to Brianna, which was found in a field near the barn. The police did not report the abandoned car initially, as they found that paychecks belonged to Brianna, so they thought someone had hijacked her car and went to find Brianna to inform her what happened. After they arrived at her place of work, and they were informed nobody had seen her, it was at that moment that her abandoned car and disappearance were connected. There were multiple accounts of people driving past the car that night and following days, which they took pictures and stated they felt an unnerving feeling about the area. When her mother was shown the pictures, she was reported to say that she saw evil in that picture and knew something horrible had happened to her daughter. There was speculation that her disappearance was connected with that of Maura Murray, who vanished in a similar fashion in New Hampshire. However, it is believed that this is no longer the case, and these 2 disappearances only share similar traits. There is much speculation as to what happened to Brianna, and some believe she may be alive to this day. In 2006, a woman who looked like her was spotted in Caesar's World in Atlantic City. However, this woman was never found or identified. In 2016, there were DNA samples revealed from the car, which were from the time of her disappearance, but there was still not any certainty of what happened to Brianna on that chilling and dark night. Patti, Blough, Renee Bruhl, and Ann Miller. July 2nd, 1966, at Indiana Dunes State Park, 3 young women went onto a motorboat on Lake Michigan and were never seen or heard from again. After they left on the motorboat, a nearby couple stayed on the beach all day for them to return, as they had left purses and other personal items there on the beach that day. As dusk came, the couple left and told the ranger of the events, and he picked up the possessions and put them in storage. The following day, Patti's father, Harold Blough, called the park to ask if they knew the whereabouts of his daughter, as no one had heard from her or 2 friends after leaving for the dunes the day prior. Bill Svedek, the park superintendent, retrieved the items from the day prior and found Patti's wallet, as well as keys and other belongings to her friends. Ann Miller's 1955 Buick was found in the parking lot the day before. Svedek told Harold that his daughter is fine and would come back, and that she was most likely just with the sailor and having a party-filled weekend. This resulted in a late investigation, where scuba teams searched the lake as well as other searchers, on foot and horseback, going all along the 45-mile-long coastline, in search of any clue as to where the 3 young women would be located. Unfortunately, there was never any sign of the young women found, and the disappearances are still a great and horrid mystery. There was one investigator who had his own beliefs and never gave up on the case, Dick Wiley. He was initially a newsman, the first to arrive at the park that July 4th, but later went into law enforcement in Florida. However, the case always was there for him, always itching in the back of his mind. Despite him being now retired, he continues gathering evidence and trying to find the truth of the case. Wiley believes that at the core of this disappearance lies some very dark secrets. All of these women would often meet at a tavern in Hodgkins, Illinois, which is where Wiley believes is the beginning of the events that led to their disappearance. Patti and Ann were both single, yet apparently got interest in married men at the tavern, which resulted in them both becoming pregnant. Renee, on the day of the disappearance, left a note in her purse, which was a letter to her husband Jeff, stating that she wanted a divorce. Wiley believes that the pregnancies are the key to the case. In 1966, abortion was still illegal in Illinois, as it was 7 years prior to Roe v. Wade. This resulted in Chicago women traveling to Indiana to get abortions from Helen and Frank Largo. Wiley was able to link the Largos, now deceased, to a floating abortion mill, which was operated on a houseboat in Lake Michigan off the coast. It is Wiley's belief that Ann and Patti had arranged abortions on that July 2nd and were ferried to the boat. However, after their arrival, he speculates that something went horribly wrong, and one of the women died from the procedure, which resulted in the Largos killing the other two, so there would be no witnesses of the events which had taken place. This would point to the reason why they would leave their belongings on the beach, as they believed they would be back shortly after the procedures. However, something truly horrid happened on Lake Michigan that day, which resulted in 3 young women to never be heard from again.